On the 6th.
You excited to be here?
Okay.
Daniel.
Yeah.
We keep seeing more and more breweries get into the distillery game. And if we're being generous, we're saying a brewery making a whiskey is hit or miss.
That's if we're being kind.
So I want to explore what needs to happen on the brewing side of things, because brewing is, you know, there's a lot of parallels.
Yep.
But also the whiskey side of things.
Yep.
We need to go to a place that brews and whiskeys. Let's do that.
Getting directions to Real Ale Brewing Company.
Yo, where do you want us to park?
Come outside.
Hey, hey, hey. Oh, dude, they didn't recognize you with the beard.
It's been a while.
Epic beard, man.
How you been?
Beard envy?
A little beard envy here.
Wow.
I feel pitiful.
I don't know how long the wife is gonna let me keep it.
Davin, what's your title? What do you do here at Real Spirits?
Davin Topel, I'm the head distiller over at Real Spirits.
And the question for this episode is, how do beer skills translate into whiskey making skills?
They seem like the same process all the way up to a certain point, right?
Yeah. For the most part, most of the beer styles that you're going to be drinking are made from 100% malted barley at different kiln levels, and each one is going to give you a different flavor.
Where do you guys keep the
profile.
barley?
Yeah, it's over here.
We've been walking for 3 days. It's nice to see these small mom and pop operations really doing something, you know?
Dave is filling up our silo right now, and I believe this is two-row.
Two-row barley.
Two-row barley is your main barley that you're using for making most of your beer styles. It's going to be your base malt. That's the reason it's going into a silo, is because we need so much of it. Our beer recipes are all pre-programmed into the system. The two-row is going to be dropped down, and then it's going to be carried over.
Grain's coming in to this room here. What is it?
That's right. So this is the mill room that we're heading into now.
Okay.
Look for the code. Quick, Rex, get it!
The grain again is going to be pushed over into the mill. I'm going to take you up to the brew house and we'll show you guys where the cracked grain goes into next.
Getting a good view? On the 6th? This is very important. For your safety and theirs. Don't tap on the glass, this frightens the brewers.
That cracked grain and all that flour that just got milled is actually going to be coming over. If you saw this running, that flour, cracked grain would actually drop from here into what's called a calandria. It is mixed immediately with the proper temperature water through the calandria and then dumped directly down so that we don't end up with any dough balls. And that's basically making, yeah, so we just got done. Yeah, so now they're gonna rinse it.
Yeah.
Perfect timing. That slurry or that porridge of water and grain is gonna be pushed over into the lauter tun. And this is the lauter tun. What this is doing is keeping everything separated. And we're gonna be slowly adding water to the very top of this, and it's going to push that wort to the bottom through a very fine mesh. So this is separating that grain matter from the wort itself. So we want just the liquid, and to try to leave back as much of that grain matter as possible. And that's what this is doing, the lauter tun.
There's two basic styles in making whiskey at this point, which is that if some people take this, you've got all the bits and bobs and pieces of grain and everything, and they take all of that and they put it into the still and distill it. The beer tradition is to separate all the physical chunky matter from the roughly cloudy liquid and then work only with the liquid from there on out. How does that's what you guys are doing, but you're separating it right here.
Yes.
How do you think that impacts the final whiskey?
Yeah, it impacts the final whiskey in the fact that all of these grain matters have slight tannins and things like that in them. So if we take those out of the system before they're boiled over and over, we're eliminating a lot of those tannins that can, you know, add flavor, but also maybe not so favorable flavors.
Right.
Okay. Ours seems to come out a little bit smoother at higher proofs, and I really think that it has to do with we're distilling a grainless, clear matter versus slurry of everything.
So in beer, there's a second process that involves pasteurization. It's not common, if ever at all, used in an only whiskey distillery. But that means the product you're working with.
They don't want to bring it up to boiling because that's now giving it another cooked stage before I actually get it. And that's going to change the chemical composition of what's going on. We don't want to bring it up to boiling because we want those full flavors of what was originally in there to come all the way across in the fermentation.
The things that Rex and I kept running into is every time a beer person sent us a spirit, they had essentially just distilled the finished beer, and it often had hops.
Yeah.
Oh my God, you really distilled the essence of the hops into this thing.
Yeah.
It tastes more like hops than anything else. So you're saying when they are running just for you, they remove the hops from part of the process and just work with the base beer.
Right. And then we're just going to send it over to the whirlpool here.
Okay.
But basically, it doesn't really do much in the whirlpool. We just send it over to the fermenter.
You excited to be here?
Okay. How'd you tell? This is the cellar. The cellar is where that clear beer is going to go into all the fermenters. That's where yeast is going to be introduced into these tanks. Yeast is introduced into a world of sugars because what yeast does is it eats sugar and it excretes CO2 and ethanol.
All right, so Davin, that's the beer side of things, and we know Real Brewing it's huge.
We're kind of an institution here in Texas. We proudly are not sold in 49 states. And that has to do with the fact that we don't pasteurize. Pasteurization, what that's doing is it's bringing your beer up to a boiling point so that it'll have a longer shelf life. But when you pasteurize and you filter and you do all these things, you're actually filtering out a lot of flavor and you're boiling out a lot of flavor. And so since we don't pasteurize, we don't filter, we stay just in Texas.
He delivers all of the beer you see here on horseback.
Yeah. Y'all. Davin, I have a confession to make. We pull up in the parking lot. I've heard of Real Brewing, Real Ale before, and we see this giant bank of buildings, and then you give us a tour of all the brewing facilities and this huge collection of equipment, automation, and I'm like, damn it, Daniel, did you get us to do a video with a giant corporate, like, is this a rep for some huge conglomeration of millionaires and billionaires? And then the moment where we walked around the corner and we saw what Real Spirits Distilling Company is in its entirety.
In its entirety.
Right there. Dude, that's amazing!
So you saw the nice, big, fancy house, the kingdom of beer, and we are in the dungeon of stillage. But
I love it though. This is more true to old Scottish distilling and old, like where they're like hiding out, even old Kentucky, right? When this wind's illegal.
Yeah.
Like they're all hiding out in these corners. So unlike the super automated other side of the, this is extremely hands-on.
This is an alembic still. It's a potbelly alembic still. It's one of the oldest styles of distillation. It's literally just a tea kettle. This style of distillation promotes the most amount of flavor.
All right, Davin, introduce us. Who do we have here?
So this is Elazar. This is our other distiller. Elazar came working for us, what was it, 4 months ago?
Yeah, but early February.
Early February. Elazar actually came from Balcones out in Waco.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
So hardcore working here. When he got here, he was 14. So how are you bringing in the beer into here?
Yeah, the fermenting tank is on the other side. That beer is pushed over to the fermenting tank. Then we take this orange hose, which Elazar is hooking up right now.
Yeah.
And we connect it to that process pipe. Again, has that hose connected, which then goes into our inlet to our still, which is also our outlet.
Yeah.
We are filling our still with 240 gallons of beer, depending on which beer style we're going to be making. It's all boiler, so it's all steam heat. Yeah. But we're keeping it under the boiling point of water. So we're keeping it under 212s because what we're trying to do is separate the ethanol from the water, leaving the water behind, allowing the ethanol to turn into a vapor, over to the condenser, Once that vapor hits that cold environment, it turns back into a liquid, and that's how we turn the vapor into a liquid and get a white whiskey. We're focusing on two main beer styles here in the distillery. Devil's Backbone, which is our Belgian triple. So that Belgian yeast strain promotes flavors of banana and clove into that whiskey. The other beer style that we focus on is the Real Heavy Scotch Ale. So that Scotch Ale is made up of 7 different complex malts, one of them being a peated malt. It's at such a low ratio though that it just adds a nuance of smoke without being a big phenolic kick to the face. So everything is brewed, fermented, distilled, and aged here on site. At the end of the maturation process, I'm actually taking these two very distinctly different styles of whiskey, mingling them together in a ratio that complements each other's flavor, and that is how we get our signature whiskey.
Tiny room, handcrafted everything, copper pot still, tweaking and dialing everything to like the tiniest degree. You're nodding your head. Yes, that's exactly what you guys are
Look,
doing.
I almost want to ask just a question. You can feel free to not answer. Fair enough? Do they know you're back here?
Sometimes.
Like, did you just set up back here and like cut a hole in the wall and start sneaking beer out of their fermenters?
It's not quite that far, but I have come in and they have started doing maintenance work on the boiler, and I have no heat whatsoever. Yeah, they've come back and said, "Oh, we forgot you were back there."
Yes. You're back here with big lighters, like holding it under the column. Yeah.
We're gonna make this happen.
No!
Yeah, I was back here for 3 years. Summer, winters, didn't really have a place of refuge inside. There was no office space, so it was rough. But it was it's been a passion project for me. It's been a passion project for the owner. It's kind of a testament to his passion and our passion to make a quality spirit with whatever we've got and whatever it takes.
Do you know where I can find some barrels?
Welcome to Davin's Barrel and Wine.
Smells amazing.
You can fit probably 105 or something.
It's that bourbon, honey, floral.
Yeah, yeah. What I typically think of is what it would smell like if you were in Hemingway's library. Like books with whiskey spilled all over them, you know, just that kind of, oh yeah, we're gonna get in there.
The freshness seal.
Yeah, the freshness will be cracked. This one is actually going to be our next single barrel. So you screw the bung puller into the bung, extract it from the bung hole, whiskey thief, which is basically
Do you have brass knuckles on that?
Yeah.
That's right. Dude, that's how you defend the whiskey.
Yeah. These large tanks are the bright tanks. That's where finished beer goes, and then they're going to be piped through stainless steel piping along the ceiling over to the different stations. The fill stations for the bottler, fill station for the can line, fill station for the keg line. That is all sent over to our shipping, which is just on the other side of that wall there.
This is as big as my grocery store. It's about as big as like a small Target. Hey Daniel.
Yeah.
When are we gonna get our elevator?
What will it go to?
Yeah. The question is, can a beer company, can beer people make a good whiskey?
Part A is it's not beer people making the whiskey.
No, it's not.
It's beer people providing the whiskey maker with the right beginning, and then the whiskey maker does whiskey things.
Yeah, so Real Spirits was the brainchild of Brad Farbstein, who's the owner of Real Ale Brewing Company. And really, he's always had a passion for whiskey. He always wanted to do a distillery, you know, 23 years ago when the brewery became a concept. But that's a whole other monster, as we all know. So whiskey never really left Brad's mind. That's where I kind of stepped in. I recently moved here from Park City, Utah. I was a distiller over at High West for a couple of years.
Oh, shit.
Right?
Oh.
I was trying to tell you that.
all right.
This is one of our favorite.
The distilling and blending program over there is top notch. So when I got to Real Ale, everything was lined up. They wanted everything to be just like their beer, made in-house, and unfiltered, unpasteurized, and full flavor.
The whiskey making process and the beer making process are very much in parallel to each other up to a point.
So,
what's going on?
These are the differences between the steps of whiskey and the steps of beer.
Okay.
The black stickers are beer.
Okay.
And
Going
the
left to
white,
right.
yeah, the white stickers are whiskey.
Okay.
And they line up where they have something in common. They both mill the grain. They bring in the grains, whatever grain they're gonna do.
Got it.
Right? Then they both create a mash, that hot porridge that converts things to sugars.
Sure.
Right? Now, in beer, there's 2 steps in there that you don't need in whiskey.
Okay.
There is lautering, so hops show up here.
Okay.
Right? Or you can add hops, like he was saying, the meatiness of the hops here, the floralness of the hops here.
In the whirlpool, yep.
Yeah, the whirlpool. Then they both go into the fermentation tanks.
Okay.
Right? Now in whiskey, you can skip those 2. Right?
No hops.
No hops.
Sure.
Boil.
No boil, don't need it. Now we add 2 steps whiskey has that beer doesn't have. We now need to distill it, then we barrel age it,
Okay.
and now we both bottle these things.
Did we establish a premise of a YouTube episode and then totally deliver on that premise with clarity and simplicity?
What? Did we oversimplify? Absolutely, we oversimplified it.
Can we get super precise and still make it simple?
No.
Okay. Kudos for Real for letting you do this the way that you need to do it to get it right.
And kudos to making a kick-ass whiskey.
Thank you very much.
Yeah. Cheers.
Cheers.
Thank you to Davin over at Real Spirits for hanging out with us. We had a good time. And I think at the end of the day, we kind of figured out there's a few things that breweries are doing as a matter of course to make an amazing beer.
Right.
That don't lend itself to an amazing whiskey. At
Or
the
that
end of the day.
shouldn't be done at all to a good whiskey.
For example, like the pasteurization.
Yeah.
Now, I know Real Ale doesn't pasteurize, but most breweries pasteurize. And then, we have yet to have a hoppy whiskey that we think was executed really nicely. You don't like hops, I like hops. I think it's possible, but
the problem with distilling is it condenses all of the flavors into a really dense version of itself.
Yeah.
In beer, it can be subtle.
So I think of it this way. I think of it as brewing is kind of like taking these amazing ingredients and then making a sushi.
Yeah.
Okay, you got like the wasabi and you got these special, savory sauces and these pieces of ginger and the things that go really well in a sushi cuisine.
Nice balance.
But whenever you're going into whiskey, you can take a lot of the similar ingredients, but you're gonna cook them. And a lot of these flavors that worked beautifully with the beer, if you just throw it into a still,
First, you're gonna condense all the flavors in a still, and then you're gonna cook it in a barrel, and it's an X factor on how that turns out.
so a brewery can absolutely make an amazing whiskey if they approach the whiskey as a distinctive standalone. This is a separate process with separate best practices that really need to be considered.
Not
every
just
separate way.
something we do with the beer that's not selling.
One interesting thing with her time at Real Ale, I was doing the drone shots, and you were very impressed and excited.
Oh, yeah.
And excited about the drone.
Yeah.
Do you think I can land the drone safely right here? All right, let's find out.
How far am I allowed to lean back in my chair?
Did you see how a bad brushwood got cut up?
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's what I'm remembering right now. How fast are you gonna bring this thing down?
At a safe speed and velocity.
Oh shit! It's right over my head.
Oh.
No, no! Oh shit! Oh god! No! No! It's windy!
All right, no, we got this. Get in your chair. Get in your chair, you pansy. Oh!
Wait, I've got my hands protected.
You ready?
Yeah.
Here we go. Since it's a beer episode, cheers to a job well done.
Cheers. Oh god. Did you know that would happen?
Yeah. We bop and pretty hot. I'm as happy as I can be. Oh, boom, boom, and it's pretty zoom. Love is sweet, love is grand, works one. Oh, we bop and pretty hot. I'll never be a millionaire.